Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operations and Appropriations is now called to order. Today is Tuesday, May 21st, and the time now is 10 o'clock. In compliance with the open government law, the notice for this public hearing were posted on the GovGuam public notice portal on GTA TV channel 21, Docomo channel 117, and live stream on the Guam Legislature YouTube. Disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Monday, May 13th and on May 19th. Today we'll be hearing Bill 236-37 COR, Committee on Rules, by the request of I Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriations for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2025, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions, specifically reference to the Public Defender Service Corporation, PDSC. At this time, I ask members of the PDSC panel to please rise and to be sworn in by the Sergeant Arm.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed. Thank you.
The general rules for this budget hearing. Please provide my legislative staff with any documents for photocopy and distribution. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimonies shall be confined to the substance of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individuals testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in the removal of the budget hearing. That applies to both sides of the aisle, okay? Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from participating and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on, that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to first start out with number one. Steve, you would be introducing yourself and everybody in the panel, and then we'll proceed, okay? But I'd also like to thank my colleagues for attending this budget hearing, specifically Senator Telo Taigui, who's my vice chair. With that, I'd ask the PDSC to give their presentation of their budget. Okay. Thank you, sir. And I'd like to also recognize the Speaker, Therese Terlai, is also joining us this morning. Sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Agustin and Speaker Terlahi, as well as Vice Chairman Senator Taigui. Before I begin with our prepared testimony, I'd like to introduce the constitute managers of the Public Defender Service Corporation. So we have three basic divisions right now. We have the main office that handles the brunt of the court-appointed criminal cases. Then we have the alternate public defender. The managing attorney is Anna Marie Gale. She's present along with her management officer, Audrey Hattori. Then we have our Civil Law Center. Our Civil Law Center fulfills our statutory mandate to provide civil representation for indigents in civil matters. Currently, they're limited to helping Manumco, helping victims of domestic violence, and also helping veterans. We picked up a very small grant to help veterans with legal services. And so the managing attorney is Carol Hinkle Sanchez. And then, of course, we wouldn't be complete with our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Moreno. So he's also present here to answer any questions that we may have. Okay, and so could I begin my testimony? Okay, thank you. Hafaday Chairman Joseph Agustin, Speaker Terlahi, Vice Chair Telo Taigui, and other members of the Committee on General Operations and Appropriations. The Guam Public Defender Service Corporation extends its gratitude to the legislature for the opportunity to discuss the corporation's upcoming budgetary needs. So most people try to avoid appearing before you, but we'd love to appear before you and, tell you what we're doing and how we're spending the government's money. And so we appreciate the chance to testify today. And we'd also like to thank the legislature for the support, and the executive branch as well, for the support that we've received. Substantial resources have been allocated to help the corporation fulfill a key part of its statutory mission, providing and improving the quality of legally mandated criminal defense representation. We've also received assistance to provide civil legal services to our Manumco, our victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking, as well as our, most recently, our veterans. Today, PDSC seeks to become statutorily whole by requesting funding for the corporation's Civil Law Center, enabling this division to provide Guam's indigent population with essential services related to civil matters. It's been, next year, right, the public defender celebrates our 50th year anniversary. When we were first created, we were mandated to provide criminal and civil legal representation, right, to the indigents of Guam. Since about 2003, there's been more or less a moratorium on our handling civil cases, except for narrow exceptions, specifically protective orders, guardianships, and also like buried body cases. Our board recently, in the last few years, allowed us to open the Civil Law Center, which provides legal, I guess, services to our Manumco, right, under a grant. But that grant does not and could not pay for the entire cost of the program. And so between that and the expansion of the civil legal services we would like to provide to our, Manumco, our veterans, and as well as our victims of domestic violence, we need local funding to be able to guarantee that we're able to provide this service going forward. So our Civil Law Center currently is funded by grants, but we also received some ARPA money in 2020 or 2021. And so that's been used to help pay for the Civil Law Center. We plan on exhausting that by the end of this calendar year. Anyways, so the corporation remains steadfast in its commitment to upholding the Constitution by ensuring a fair and just criminal justice system that improves outcomes for marginalized groups. In line with its vision and mission, the PDSC focuses on providing exceptional, holistic, client-centered legal representation and courtroom advocacy while facilitating access to social services to reduce recidivism in Guam's isolated island community. PDSC also requires funding to fulfill its statutory mandate to provide civil legal assistance for our indigent population. To support these constitutionally mandated duties and statutory obligations, in fiscal year 2025, the PDSC is requesting a total of $9,833,387, of which $7,012,231 is for personnel and operations of PDSC, including all the administrative costs, and $1,829,419 is for personnel and operation for the alternate public defender, and lastly, $991,737 is for personnel and operations for its Civil Law Center. So in July next year, PDSC will celebrate its 50th year anniversary. Established under Public Law 13-51, now codified at 12 GCA Chapter 11, the corporation was created with a board of trustees entrusted to oversee PDSC's activities. After a moratorium lasting decades, really since 2003, restricting PDSC from assisting individuals in need of representation in civil matters, the board lifted part of this moratorium. This change allowed the PDSC to offer representation through its Civil Law Center, which serves Guam's elderly population and victims and individuals affected by domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault. Additionally, over the last 4 fiscal years, PDSC has operated the CLC with support from grant funds and American Rescue Plan money. Now for fiscal year 2025, the corporation is seeking local funding and has included a budget section in its request to the Guam legislature for this purpose. The PDSC is hoping to receive overwhelming support from this great body to actually fulfill its mandate of providing services in criminal and civil matters for Guam's indigent population. For PDSC's FY 2025 budget, the proposed recommendations are requested for inclusion under the chapter of the budget bill for legal services. And so I know that each of you have my written testimony. The next section just provides the breakdown per division. It would be $1,829,419 for alternate public defender, $991,737 for the civil law center, and the difference would be of about $7,012,000 for the main PDSC office. We don't anticipate much in lapse funds from fiscal year 2024. It might be like under 100,000. So we're hoping that if there is continuing appropriation language allowing the rollover of unspent funds, that we'll be able to apply that in fiscal year 2025. And additionally, you know, we looked at the current bill, and we appreciate being included in such important provisions as the hiring of retired attorneys. Both offices have had to hire retired attorneys because of the shortage of lawyers on Guam. We also appreciate the opportunity to hire independent contractors through an RFP for legal representation when such is impractical or impossible for PDSC or APD to handle representation. So, you know, that's one of the solutions we're looking at in terms of resolving the shortage of lawyers. Is if we're conflicted off from handling a case, we might enter into RFPs with private attorneys who are willing to pick up some of that case, so that way it wouldn't necessarily have to go to the private attorney panel. We believe that if attorneys are given an RFP process, rather than, if you join the private attorney panel, you can end up with like 50 cases a year. You have no control over it. But with an RFP, a lawyer or a firm could say, like, I'll take 10 felonies a year, or I'll take 15 felonies a year, and that way they can accommodate their regular practice too, right? So if this provision would give us the flexibility to explore that as a possible solution.
Where's that provision?
You know, it's in section 20.
No, in your testimony.
Oh, it's on page 2 of 3, the second to last paragraph. And that currently exists in Guam law under the budget law from last year, but we haven't actually employed it because of the shortage of, you know, the problem they're having with court-appointed attorneys. It's something that we're looking into.
Does that complete your testimony?
Oh, anyways, I just have a couple more lines.
Yeah, go ahead.
So finally, considering PDSC's current financial situation, in addition to local government appropriation, the corporation has received funds from the American Rescue Plan Act and support from the Governor's Office through its Federal Programs Office to operate programs within the Civil Law Center, including the Advocacy Center, which handles protective orders for victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault, and stalking, as well as they handle the legal assistance service contract through the Division of Senior Citizens, providing legal services for our Monoco. So based on current community needs, PDSC is hopeful that this esteemed body will recognize the necessity of providing local funding to maintain the programs within the Civil Law Center for the benefit of Guam's island community. Now, regarding budget management, PDSC obviously adheres to its financial limits and reduces expenses whenever possible. We will have a little bit of lapsed funds this year, probably under 100,000 from FY 2024. And the adjustment really in the attorney pay plan caused the greatest impact on our budget request, increasing it by over 300,000. And in light of this financial discipline, PDSC is pleased to report that there are no outstanding personnel obligations from prior years, and all merit bonus payments are current. In closing, PDSC takes great pride in its traditional role of protecting the constitutional rights of the accused and its evolving role in reducing crime through responsive, holistic defense services that ensure fairness and just outcomes while maintaining public safety. These achievements cannot be sustained without sufficient and balanced funding among all criminal justice stakeholders. The corporation respectfully requests that the Guam legislature provide adequate funding to meet the Public Defender Service Corporation's criminal and civil mandates for fiscal year 2025. Thank you.
And sir, with that statement, then that means that what you submitted meets all the requirements, represents the true needs of the agency to meet its core mission and objectives, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's basically a rollover budget. We just asked for one additional position, a paralegal. And, you know, obviously the paralegal is very important because what we're finding is that we're assuming a lot of the duties that the Attorney General's office isn't doing. Like our paralegals are preparing plea agreements and we're tending to file more motions now. So that's the only additional position we requested was the paralegal, at least for the PDSC side. APD, I don't think there was a request for an additional position. And Civil Law Center, obviously, that's a separate standalone request. Technically, those would be all new positions. All right.
But the budget is all three as one.
That's
Okay, so my statement is, your budget request meets your core mission and your objectives, correct?
yes. I think,
Okay. I just want to be consistent, okay? Don't be...
Don't be lawyerly, huh?
Yeah, keep it simple. Just keep it simple. I'd like to also recognize my colleague, Senator Tom Fisher, joined us this morning. And with that, I'd ask the Oversight Chair, Speaker Chirai, if you have any questions. If not, I'll ask Senator Tidegui if you have anything, because I know you have to take off. You have to take care of something this morning. Senator Tidegui, if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have a family funeral to attend, but I wanted to make sure I was here to show you that I do definitely appreciate your agency, Public Defender, and all that you do. The hardworking individuals, especially with very little that you have to work with, and there's so many people that are in need that come to for your service. So I greatly appreciate all the hard work of not just you, Director, but those of your employees, because they're really taking the grunt of it and working late at night. So greatly appreciate it and understand the importance of especially the Civil Law Center. But I do have a couple questions to ask because, this has been taken care of by grant funding. And the last thing we want to do is, once funding dries up or no more money coming in, falling from the sky on federal side or anywhere else, that the government has to inherit, this whole program now because of it. And we all hope that it lasts forever. But so in 2023, there was the amount of $568,000 that was funding the CLC. Okay, and that money came from, that money also came from ARP funding, or was that from the grant?
That's from the Division of Senior Citizens.
Okay, can you identify yourself, please,
I'm sorry,
and
I
who you are?
apologize.
No problem.
My name's Carol Hinkle Sanchez. I'm the managing attorney with the Civil Law Center.
Okay, and so where did this funding come from, the 500?
So the funding came out of Division of Senior Citizens under the Title III for the Elderly Justice Program.
Okay, just bring the microphone a little bit closer if you don't mind. Yeah, okay, there. So we
It
can
came
hear
from
you.
this. It came from it's the Division of Senior Citizens grant money that came from
Okay.
Department of Public Health and Social Services.
So it came from grant funding, right? That
Correct.
amount of money?
Well, it was 197,000. So the difference was we had to make up some other ways.
Okay, so you received 197 from Public Health, and then how did the rest of the funding come in?
So when I got on board, the funding that was within the office was 190, it's not 197, it's 192,144, and that came from Division of Senior Citizens, which is the Department of Public Health and Social Services Title III grant money. And then we also received STOP money, which funds the Advocacy Center, which is our protective orders, and that is 114,000. And then, of course, the remaining was supplemented by what is ICJR, and that grant is not, it's not certain if it's going to be every year, so we're going to exhaust that, or we've probably already exhausted it. And so the other grant that was used was the ARPA grant, which is American Recoveries.
In FY23?
Correct.
Okay, so the RC that you mentioned?
ICJR is also from the Federal Programs Office, and that was funding our TAC advocacy.
Okay, you said federal programs. Okay, is that under public health or is it
That's
under
under the Governor's
judicial?
Office.
Oh, under Governor's Office.
Yes.
Who distributes that funding?
That's under Jane Flores' group. So that's
for women?
that's Stop VAWA, yeah.
The
VAWA
STOP
money.
grant? Okay. Well, that, you received 114 from the STOP grant.
Correct.
But then you received additional from another grant from...
ICJR.
Yeah.
And that's a smaller amount. I think that's in like the 60,000 maybe.
Okay. So what is the possibility for FY25? What do you have coming your way in FY25 to fund CLC?
We plan to continue to apply for the seniors grant and the STOP grant as well. So we do look at whatever available, because we want to offset whatever budget we can locally. But the thing is, when you look at our statistics, and that's the reason I provided the statistics to you, is because if you really look at the statistics, we hit like a total of 381 cases in 2023. If you look at what it would cost, or a projected cost of that in a regular, like going to private practice, that's over $1 million. The cost to represent these individuals would be over $1 million. We only receive 197,000 from DSC. Current to date, I've given you the stats, I think it's 120. That's already $200,000. We've already exhausted the entire 197 if we were to bill these clients the way a private attorney bills, right? So that funding source is not, it's not sufficient to operate the entire office for a whole year.
So if I can, I'm sorry, I'm sure they're going to, the speaker is going to talk to you more about this agency, but I have to get my questions through before I have to leave, so I apologize.
No worries.
Allow me to just finish. So 568,000 is what you had total in FY23. Can you tell me how much in the ARP funding that you received in FY23 in the ARPA funding? Just for CLC, just for CLC.
So I think we received a lump sum, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, about like $1.5 million. And so we've been using that to basically fund the Civil Law Center since we received it, between that and the grants. And so
can you just tell me how much money did you dedicate to the CLC in FY23? That's all.
Oh.
Not, because I know you're bulking all the money for all the agencies together. I just want to know for the CLC.
Okay, so I think in 2023, we actually spent, what's it, 541.
Well, put it this way, you have about $360,000 that you received from all these grants, and then yet you spent $568,000. So it's obvious that you probably pumped in about $200,000, $260,000.
From ARPA.
From ARPA, okay. Yeah.
76,000.
300?
76,000 that was used out of ARPA.
376,000. So then you go to FY24, and now there was 856,000. So it sounds to me like either the grants went up or more ARP funding went into
More ARPA funding went in. It
Okay.
went up to 663,000.
663.
63,000.
All in all, you received that year in FY24 in okay, let's go back, Stephen. When you received the ARP funding, you received a bulk, about 1.6 million, if I'm not mistaken, and then you utilized that and carried over into the next year? Okay, and that's where we are today. So technically, you used most of the ARP funding for the CLC.
That's correct.
Okay, now we're coming into FY25, your requested budget. And now it's asking for $984,017. And you're not receiving any ARP funding. Are you putting any ARP funding in FY25?
Oh, yes, so whatever ARPA money we receive, we're using it exclusively for the Civil Law Center. And so I
How
think
much is that, Steve?
the balance, I think, is like 300,000.
It's about 312,000.
300?
12.
Yeah.
312,000 is what you plan on receiving. So technically, you want from the general fund 984,000, and then you're going to pump in 313,000 from ARPA fund. Is that what how I'm reading this?
Yes.
Because you're requesting for 984 from the general fund, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you have the leftover 313. So technically, you're asking for $1.2 million to fund CLC.
Well, so we would only be authorized to expend 991,337. And so what we do is like, and then we build the grants, and then the following year, we would reduce our request of local funding.
Okay,
So it's not our intention to like double dip or anything. We just want to.
Yeah, because if you look at this, based on your request, you're requesting 984,000 from the general fund. We're not even including the stop grant at 114 or the 192 grant, or even any money come from the ICJ. But we know you're going to be pumping in $313,000 from our fund for FY25 that you've set aside. So you're coming up to about $1.2 million that you will be utilizing for the CLC.
Well, can I clarify too? I also have a part-time attorney that's paid under the EJC monies. So that 197 is devoted to my part-time staff as well.
Okay, okay. So I just want to make this clear. Your budget has gone from 800 for CLC that used to be funded through grant money and ARP funding. Okay, none coming from the general fund. Now we got to dip into the general fund and cover 984,000. But yet you still have 300,000 from ARP funding, and we haven't even touched the grant money for that's coming up from STOP at 114.1. So that's why I'm kind of confused, Mr. Chair, on this when I was looking at the CLC, because, I believe in supporting it. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I've spoken to your office on an occasion when somebody needed some assistance. But this is quite substantial, and you're not even incorporating all the grant money, to utilize in this area. So I think this is one thing, Mr. Chair, that we really need to look with and ensure that you have the funding you need to continue on. Because you said that the moratorium is now lifted to allow general fund money now to fund your agency. But almost $1 million? We try and go after as much grant money as we can and utilize that. And I'm hoping, Ms. Sanchez, is the money from your grant is already expended to its fullest?
Yeah, we expend it to the fullest, yes,
Okay,
we do.
great,
That's
great.
the intentions of it.
Yeah.
And I just want to indicate that with the grant money, just remember that it's very limited to what it can be used for.
Right.
And like if we're going to talk about the EJC monies, it's limited to 60 years and older, which means we can't service anyone below 60. And power of attorneys and wills, right now ARPA allows us to go to 55 and older, which is why we're able to service that population. But eventually the ARPA funds is going to run out. So when that happens, we're going to be limited to 60 if we're only relying on grant money.
Right.
So the grant monies we receive are very specific. Stop money is very specific as to what we can do with it,
Right.
and so is the DSC money.
Right.
And
And
so that's the reason why we want to roll into what is civil law,
Right.
doing civil legal represent, so we can expand the scope of what we service. The clientele, the population is what we're looking at. We want to expand the services that we're offering, so it's not limited to that scope. And now it would be income eligible. It would be based on income eligibility, of course.
Yeah, and of course, and it would be based on the availability of how much general fund money that we can appropriate. Because now this is something new that we have not been able to, or didn't have to fund, and now we have to. So we're going to have to pull from some of the other agencies. Somebody's going to have to go without, in order to fund this. But I'm glad to hear that there's still ARP funding at the 313, so it prepares us to, work on next year. I wish I'd have known this before, that we're going to run out of the ability to use grant money, and now we have to tap into general fund, and that becomes more difficult. Other than that, Director Torrey, with regards to your office, how much increase in salaries has there been for your office in the last,
So,
from FY '24 to '25? Or,
we think the impact of that attorney pay is about $300,000 across all offices. And so previously, the legislature had funded like a 6% increase. Then DOA did a new study and raised it to 24%. And so the difference between that 24% and the 6% that was already funded, we believe, is around $300,000.
so can you tell me why there is an increase, such an increase in the attorneys, and of course the director's office, administrative office, there's such an increase, but then there's a decrease in those who are out in the field, like process servers are lower than before, and then legal secretary services are lower than before. We're talking about almost, $80,000 less. MIS system service is down $69,000 compared to last year?
Yeah, so if you're referring to the OFB report, they lumped in personnel and operations. So we try to reduce operations in those, the ones where there's a decrease, those are really due to operational decreases. Don't worry, we have to really fight to keep the employees we have, so we're not going to shortchange any of our staff.
I hope not,
But
those guys,
it's
those
getting very
behind the
hard
scenes are the ones that really drive, the work that comes out of your office. You need those individuals.
Yeah,
I understand you need
absolutely.
attorneys. In fact, there's a legislation that I introduced today about paralegals, that I hope we can take advantage of too as well. So you'll see that on the books later on today.
And that's happening nationwide, where because of the shortage of lawyers, more and more attorneys are being dependent on paralegals. And
Well, I
so,
hope you,
that's why that's our only request. And last year our only request was for a social worker, and we're almost about to fill that. So we really appreciate having a social worker. We have clients coming to our office on a daily basis who they don't really need legal help, but they're getting other help. And so we're connecting them, getting them IDs. And I mean, we've had some clients even get signed up for SNAP. And so if we can get these people the tools needed to get on their feet, then, hopefully we'll reduce crime. So we're trying to play our part.
Okay, well,
Thank you for
that
your
bill is
support.
coming out, and it's based on a testimony that you provided on one of the other oversights that we had here at public hearings. So I introduced this bill to help that out, but we need to codify a paralegal's definition and put it in place. So last question is IT department. How many people do you have in your IT department?
So we only have two. APD has one, so that's like 3 people between like 70-some staff. I mean, we're...
2 individuals?
Well, 3 altogether.
Do you have a program software that you have to protect your information, your data, or do you use the Office of OTEC's ability to protect your software? And
I know we have our own...
This is cybersecurity. We're talking about cybersecurity in your department. How well are you being very cautious about your information and keeping it safe from any hacking or
Well, I don't really want to jinx our office, but I mean, they've done a great job so far. And I know there's a lot of firewalls up. And so I think our IT guys have it under control.
We'll put it this way, Stephen. They've got a lot of people at the University of Guam, GCC, and even at the hospital, and still got hacked. That information. Docomo, one of the largest companies, that deals with telecommunications, they were hacked. So your information is very critical. A lot of private stuff that are involved in this information, and you have to put aside funding to create a strong, office that secures your data and information. All agencies should. So I also recommend that you put something together before we go into budget and provide it to the oversight chair, OFB, on how much you spend for cybersecurity at your office. I'd really like to know what that is, and hopefully separate that and ensure that there's no uses of that money other than for cybersecurity. Okay? Other than that, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity and wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tadwi. I'd like to also recognize Senator Roy Canata. Steve, the document we got?
Oh, yes.
You have that, right?
Is that... The OFB one or the,
Governor of Guam's Budget Digest.
oh, yeah, we do have that one.
I think as we move forward, please use that document. Are we following? Are you with me?
Oh, no, I'm totally with you. So-
Okay, and the reason why I'm saying this, Steve, is because as we talk about the Civil Law Center, as you look down the document, total appropriation says 991, correct? Are you following?
Yes.
And then the next line says the grants. Okay? No, just follow the same sheet. I didn't move to another sheet. Just follow along.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the next page.
Oh, this one. That's on page.
Okay?
The BD one.
You have 3 sheets that covers each branch. If we follow it, some of the questions asked, use it, answer.
Oh,
Keep it
okay.
simple. Okay?
Thank
If you follow it, it says going down 991, grants received 192, exactly what Ms. Sanchez said. What are you asking for? 799.
For local expenditure.
Follow the math, okay? I'm going to follow that. And then if you look to the right, what the variance is 135. Trying to keep things simple, Steve. Por favor, make use of Mike, use the forms that you're giving us, okay? Because I understand why the increases happen on every agency. You got the attorney pay, you talked about 300,000? Yeah, sure. One colleague said, invest in IT. If we give you your budget, you're able to do what you need to do. Okay?
Absolutely.
So we gotta work with you. Because when anyone says you need to invest here, give me an A and then I'll realign it and I'll do it. Because when we give you the budget, we don't dictate to you where you're gonna put the money other than this branch, this branch, this branch. We give it to you in a lump sum. How you break it down will be on you and Mike. And Mike will be like, give me a lump sum and I'll show you where we're gonna spend it. And then we can ask you guys to explain it all. And with that, I'm going to save the oversight chair, Speaker Chulai, to the end. I'm going to have Senator Fisher, if he has any questions, to let it loose on you folks, okay? So let's enjoy the rest of the morning.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Just follow
Chair.
your documents. Don't look at anything else. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hinckley, when you provide Monamco services, you don't bill, obviously you don't bill the recipients, but do you, in-house, do you bill to determine how much is being expended on any given case?
So, yeah, we don't bill. You're correct. The services are free. We get the grant money. We provide. We do keep track of our time that's provided to DSC.
Okay.
So on top of, that, we also do outreach. I have an attorney right now out in a community center doing outreach as we're speaking.
What kind of outreach?
We're at the centers. We're at the senior centers conducting outreach. It is Senior Citizens Month, and so we conduct outreach throughout the various senior citizen centers. And so I have an attorney out right now, Attorney Cat Focus, Seguenza. She's conducting that outreach. So aside from the legal work we do in the office, we also go and do site visits. So we go to whether if they're hospitalized at GRMC or GMH, or even their homes if they're bedbound.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you'll see in our billing, and that's provided to DSC.
Okay, but you're not capped by the number of people you see based on money, is that correct?
I know we're supposed to hit 20, I believe it's 20 clients a month is what the grant requires. And so that's part of what we signed on our MOU, 20 clients a month. But we've exceeded that, so we're hitting about 30 to 35 clients a month, if not more.
Okay. So if there is a cap, it's self-generated?
That is determined between our agency and DSC, that the cap is part of the grant, so that can be changed.
Well, yeah, I don't criticize you all for having a cap. I was just curious because you could be overwhelmed easily by the number of people, especially when you're adding civil into it. So that's what I was asking those questions for. How, in the Civil Law Center, civil law is a pretty big plate.
It is.
How do you screen for cases?
So at this point, what we've been doing is in the civil law, actually, we've been assisting Child Protective Services. So there have been cases where there isn't actual true abuse or neglect, so they're not going to proceed forward. But the problem is there's no guardianship in place. The child's been with the individual for so many years.
But okay, but I mean, you have kind of guardrails. I mean, you're not going to take
Correct.
on, you're not going to take on complex civil litigation.
No, we're not. And the statute's very clear. So under the Public Defender Services Corporation Act, it's very clear that when we assist, even in like small estate probate, they have to get 3 rejection letters from the private bar.
Okay.
And we're not allowed to do fee-generating matters.
Yeah.
So anything that generates fees, like civil action.
Can't do
we can't do those cases. So we are going to screen it out, and we want to do an assessment and look at what is the needs of the community and start to expand in that area. Because you probably know, like in the past, 30 years ago, public defenders was doing like divorce and custody. Those are things we don't do anymore. I'm trying to see how we can expand in areas because it then poses problems where there isn't any like a child custody order, especially where it's in a protective order. It's temporary, now it's between 1 to 5 years. And so when that order expires, there isn't any true child custody order if we don't proceed in a child custody case.
Do you, under the Manamco side of the house, can you do divorces for Manamco?
We don't do it in that. I think we have grant specific as well. And so I don't think that's part of the grants, the program. So what would happen is if we had civil law, we could expand into that area.
Yeah. There's a constant tension between how much resources you have to expend and what people want. Yeah. And I mean, it's a constant battle. There's no answer to it. I mean, obviously, you could get involved in litigation that would suck up your entire budget just for one client if you weren't careful, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, you are providing all of you are providing a necessary key service to the people of Guam with a very limited budget. I mean, we're really talking about less than $10 million for the entire, for such a key agency. So I support your budget request, and thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Roy Cananta, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
No questions, Mr. Chair. I think my colleagues already exhausted the agenda on questioning. But I certainly just wanted to thank each and every one of you for your continued public service. I know sometimes the clients can be a little bit difficult and family members can be a little bit difficult. That's the honest truth, right? So I just wanted to thank you guys for all your hard work and your continued community service, and keep up the good work, and let me know if my office needs to support you guys in any way. Okay? Thank you guys again.
I just like how Senator Cananto say little difficult. No, they're not. They're
Especially like
very difficult.
Especially
but,
the babies of the family are the worst.
Yeah, but I know you folks are doing what you can. Madam Speaker, you have any questions or comments, and then I'll close. She'll just give her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for all of you at the Public Defenders and alternate Public Defenders offices for your work on this budget, for your presentations today, and for your work throughout the year. Okay, I guess just to recap. So, Director Steve, you're saying this is a rollover budget and that it's only adding the one paralegal? However, on the digest, right, it shows for public defenders an increase of 309,709 variance between FY24 and FY25. For the Directors and Administrative Director's Office, an increase of 570,000 for attorneys. Can we just start with the attorneys? Is this just to cover the increased pay of existing attorneys according to the pay plan? How did you cover that in the current fiscal year?
So our board had authorized us to pay out the attorney pay raise after the DOA pass the attorney raise. So what we did was, we didn't have an appropriation from the legislature, but we had that continuous appropriation, leftover money from prior years, and so that was used to pay for the raises during this fiscal year. Right?
So what does the 570 represent?
So I think that 570 is,
That's an increase.
Yeah, that's correct, because we were not funded for it from last
So
year. So that's part of
the increase, 18%, is 570,000?
Well,
Or are you
that's-
getting new attorneys?
We're not, we actually haven't asked for any new attorneys, despite the fact that, that there's now an 8th judge. We're trying to see if we could just handle it with our existing staff. Plus, it's hard to find more attorneys, so we don't really want to ask for attorneys. We won't be able to fill it.
I know, but it's
But,
570,
yeah,
$500,000
that's
for
according-
attorneys.
That's for the raises, I believe.
That's for all
the
for raises? Because the
24%.
alternate public defenders' attorneys only went up by 40,000. And they've got,
So in fiscal year 2024, they actually received the full amount of their request, so that, I think part of their request included that,
they could not have included the 18% raises in their FY24 request because that didn't come in until like a month ago.
well, so I think the judiciary had already, I think there was a period of time when the judiciary had already implemented theirs or something. Is that the?
I'm just saying, your increase is 500,000, and the number of attorneys, how many attorneys?
Well, we have 14 plus
Yeah, and they have
myself
15,
and John
right?
Morrison, so 16
Well,
altogether.
according to your
But
spreadsheet here, they have 12 alternate public defenders, you have 15 attorneys. Your increase is by $500,000, their increase is by $40,000 for notwithstanding the attorney pay plan.
yeah, we can clarify that and we'll send you. I don't know
All
if there's a
right.
calculation error, but we'll double check that number.
Okay,
Because you're
Because
correct, it seems a little higher, right?
yeah, a lot higher, 500,000 higher. Okay, and then the directors and administrative directors office increased 309,000?
Yeah, so I'm not, and that's basically because that's where the, like Mr. Morrison, our deputy, comes from there. But there's really only 2 attorneys in that.
But it's an increase, 309,000.
Yeah.
You're thinking this is, director and administrative director's office, $309,000 increase from last year.
Yeah, and then so we add, and that's the one where we, I think our social workers in there. So they fall under there too.
But we covered that last
That
year.
was covered last year.
Right? So it shouldn't show an increase, it should show the same.
Okay. We'll clarify that and get that to you.
Steve, use your sheet, because I'm using it and I'm following along. and
No, I know, I'm like,
If you use it, trust me, it'll answer all your questions. Because Mike put it together properly.
I don't know what this one is. This one is. What about this one?
yeah, this one. Did it go up by 494?
This is supposed to be 700,000. Maybe they included it up here by mistake. This is
Because we weren't fully funded.
civil law centers, the one asking
Yeah.
is included.
Yeah. Yeah.
In essence, this is our what they included to show what they're getting before. But this is what they need for local funding. So this is just representative for really this wouldn't be here because we didn't have local funding. I know. This is variance public because they said they're asking for.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's correct because you're using their number.
Oh, I have that one. So, just to clarify, so the increase is, in FY 2024, we did not receive an appropriation for the attorney pay raise. And so that really is the main difference, the 24%. And because, you know, it's a large portion of our budget, the 16 attorneys.
What do you mean by 24%?
Well, so the 24% that DOA had adjusted the attorney pay scale to, it wasn't funded in our FY 2024 authorized.
So for your
budget.
15 attorneys, it will be a $500,000 increase
That's, yeah.
for your public defender
for
only.
public defender.
But the same 24% increase for alternate public defender only, they only require 40,000.
That's correct. And I know that they received a greater
12 attorneys.
percent of their funding. So like last year, our funding request was not, we didn't receive our full funding request. Yours is really only 40,000?
All right, well, I'm
But I think it's because we didn't receive any funding for the raises.
all right, well, so you're saying that's only for the raises, nothing
But
else?
we're not asking for any.
The $500,000.
That's correct.
All right, and then the directors and administrative directors office, the 309,000 increase,
Yeah, that's also
salaries,
part salaries.
increase, raises?
So, I mean, only the attorneys really should have, were not funded in FY 2024. So, I mean, the attorneys within the director's office. So but that really doesn't account for that full increase. The rest have got to be increments and merit bonuses. Because that's like a 309,000
Oh, no.
variance, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And we're not asking for any additional positions in that. Let me see.
All right, because, yeah, so your overall budget increase request is 883,000 for public defender alone.
Yes.
All right, so if that's for the attorney pay plans, and if you could just confirm that after this, then we can't do anything about that. That's already implemented, and we have to fund that, and of course, that's fair. But if it's for something else, if you could just let us know, because it does seem like a large amount, especially compared to alternate public defender. So the alternate public defender's overall budget request is only an increase of $83,000. All right, now the Civil Law Center, I'm very grateful for all the work that you do, and I guess it's just a little shocking to me that we're coming in for $1 million budget request for the Civil Law Center, and then, you know, there are different things going on. First of all, when we allowed the Elder Justice Center, that was very clearly supposed to be to run the senior citizens contract, the one that we get the federal funding for, the one that Senator Fisher and I used to do as private attorneys, that has always been bid out to private attorneys. So it's a huge shift in the Government of Guam that it was now going to be done by public attorneys in a Elder Justice Center. It was supposed to be run on the grant, and the grant has, I don't know, that it's supposed to pay for itself, right? That was the deal. Then a lot of the other things that you had been doing prior to that, including the grants from the domestic violence program, all of that you had, public defender was able to take care of on its own with the grant money. The Advocacy Center, maybe could you just explain that one? What's the difference? This is a specific grant that you received in 2023?
That's the STOP grant.
So that's still part of the
Correct,
stop. Yeah,
what you're talking
okay,
about.
so,
and-
yeah, both of those you were able to take care of with your grant money, and that, you know, of course, I have no objection to that. But I guess your comparison, and Carol, you know, we're very good friends, but your comparison that, oh, this would have been billed out at $1 million and private lawyers got, to me, is irrelevant to what we're talking about today, because we're not talking about private lawyers, and we're not talking about any profit making by anybody. We're talking about government lawyers in a government agency doing just exactly that. And you know, these grants, you know, you're supposed to put in your budgets for the grants as well and show how you're going to be able to handle these programs based on the money that you're receiving. Now, if the increase of $900-some thousand, almost $1 million, is because you want to expand to other areas, I mean, I know the public defender, so in here I'm trying to find the language. It says the Civil Law Center, such appropriation shall be contingent upon the lifting of any moratorium currently in effect with future limitations based upon capacity and priorities. It always has to be based on your capacity, your priorities, lifting the moratorium. Who's going to lift your moratorium?
Well, so, I mean, I think the
Who
legislature...
does? Who put the moratorium on?
Well, the board, so... and
Who's the board?
So the board is, and that's the problem, is that, so our board is more, some of them feel that we should only be doing criminal defense, even though the statutory mandate for the office is to represent indigents in both criminal and civil matters. And so obviously there's a constitutional right to a criminal attorney, so it takes precedence, even though the
That's right.
legislature clearly wanted civil indigent.
They did at that time, and we do, of course, still, if we had the money and if we had enough attorneys to cover the criminal defense. But we were all lawyers summoned into a bar meeting because of the crisis we are in for criminal defense. And so I can see why the moratorium was placed for a while, because we had to prioritize criminal defense, because there is no other people in Guam. Very few private lawyers trained for criminal defense are able to handle that and do a very, you know, appropriate job. And that's why, you know, public defender has to shine in this area. I mean, and that's why the alternate public defender, it's a very clever way that it was divided so that less conflicts, more attorneys can handle it. And I was wondering if we should concentrate on that, like maybe make another division, because you're right, we are short of lawyers, so in every area of law in Guam, we need lawyers. We also need lawyers for criminal defense, and there is no other place to go for that, you know, without the courts doing what they're doing, mandating everybody in the Guam bar to handle criminal defense, whether they're competent or not, or whether they're whatever. But if we want competent defense, I mean, have you considered another division, another, such as an alternate public defender, a second alternate public defender to cut off, you know, to cut off the conflicts and do more of that type of work?
Yeah, and so those are things we're kind of discussing now, and that's why, you know, we support that language allowing us to issue RFPs for, because we believe that if we do, you know, if we have funding available and we issue RFPs and contract directly with defense counsel, they might be more comfortable telling us, like, I'll do it if I only get like 10 cases a year, rather than if right now, if you join the panel, you could end up like, you never know how many cases you'll end up with, right? So the attorneys will have a lot more control through an RFP process, and we think that'll be more attractive. And so, you know, that's something we're contemplating.
That's something you're discussing with the courts, and this is in lieu of the court's mandated appointment program. Instead of them appointing lawyers, you will contract. What did you pay them?
And so it comes, you know, part of it is that the Sixth Amendment Center issued a report detailing or recommending really the creation of a commission rather than having the court control all those things.
Public defender, right?
That's
Rather
correct.
than controlling the court controlling the public defender, it should be controlled by a commission independent of the court. That's always been clear. We've been talking about this for years. director asked you for language so that we can implement that. I think that should be one of the priorities that we get done this year, is
Well, we're
that,
hoping-
because then,
We're hoping to meet with you to discuss that, because next year's our 50th year anniversary, and we would like to reconstitute,
well, regardless of anniversary or not,
yeah, we need to get it done. And
it's
so
very clear that needs to be done. Otherwise, yeah. But, they have been, they still have, I think, regardless of if we did that, the power to appoint attorneys to cases. So that's not going to resolve that. To appoint attorneys to cases, we need to, just have more attorneys to appoint. And so, I'm just wondering, are you able to do that? Are we able to do that? Like even with your existing attorneys, just divide them up into, would that help the conflict situation or not? No, because they already would be conflicted?
Well, I mean, that's something that we've also discussed. The problem is, there's logistical issues with staffing, and also if we, if our right now, our attorneys are able to work together and not have to show up at court every day, and they can meet clients. But if we cut the office in two, then.
All right. So what about adding more than, Annie, were you going to say something?
No, hi, Senate Speaker Annie Gale here. What I was shaking my head at was, it has been talked about around the court of having another, a third layer, an alternate public defender. I don't know what the name would be, but for us, it would be, I don't think we could take any away from our office or from the public defender. But is to have a core group of those lawyers who strictly want to do defense work, maybe on a smaller basis, and have another sub-office of the public defender. But that's just, I think one of the judges was talking about it to us, and just off the record.
Okay.
And I think that's a great idea, but you're right. The point of having a commission to run the whole public defender, all of us, is something that should be a front priority, but we were waiting to see what the Sixth Amendment Center would say before we ran off and did, but now that we do have specific and concrete suggestions, I think we can run with that and start doing the stuff necessary to ask for the legislature's help in getting a commission together.
Do you think there are enough cases to sustain another full-time public defense agency?
I do. I think there are.
No, yeah, definitely.
Like, how many, I'm sorry, so you've got 12 and 15 lawyers?
We have 6.
Oh, 6. Your staffing pattern says, well, the organization chart says 12. Okay, so you only have 6. All right.
We have
6
6
lawyers. And Steve?
Well, we're supposed to have 16, but we have a couple vacancies.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 1 week.
All right. Oh, okay. So maybe a small one because
Yeah.
6 panel? Okay, well, we'll see. All right, I guess we could figure that out. I'd like your suggestions on that.
Oh.
If that would help to take care of the criminal defense side, then once that's taken care of for me, we can concentrate on everything else. But in the meantime, I'm hoping, I'm sure the chair is going to try to find money to accommodate this, but I really think these programs began with grants, have to live within the grants, and they should strive to do that because we could use that money instead to set up another public defense, which we can't escape in no matter what we do, whereas hopefully the civil bar will pick up whatever else needs to be done. I know you're going to say we're short on lawyers everywhere, which we are, but yeah, we just have to prioritize, so we're trying. And I appreciate all your efforts and your recommendations, so.
And,
But I just think,
And
go ahead,
Speaker,
Steve.
it's because the statute requires our office, it doesn't make it permissive. It actually says shall represent individual indigents in civil matters. That's why we're always advocating for local funding for it, because otherwise it's an unfunded mandate, and grants, right?
But there's also a moratorium on it,
Well,
right? So that
I
your
think
board
it's
has put
really-
a moratorium on your
It's
work
just
in that
we're just
regard.
A writ of mandamus away, really. If some concerned citizen who needs civil legal assistance pointed to that statute and decided to file a writ of mandamus against us, then you know, at that point, I mean, we hope it doesn't get to that point, but we're doing what we can to help as many as we can. And so Carol's doing a great job. Hopefully we can use local funds to pay for local manumco, local victims of domestic violence, and, you know, local veterans, which they're now getting into. But we understand there's so many other priorities, but we just hope, you know, you consider us.
The Veterans Grant is a new one?
It's only a $10,000 grant for a short period of time. But, you know, so Speaker, I know like before civil law was developed, they did provide civil representations within the public defenders.
Yes, they did.
And it
with the
raised a lot of
grants.
conflict issues, which is why it's perfect now that we're a separate office, distinct from them. Just like APDs, we have our own office and our own database. It avoids conflict issues now. You know, we've also started taking court-appointed guardian ad litem cases in the juvenile special proceedings, so that the focus of alternate and public defenders can be on the representing parents and not being appointed in the guardian ad litem position. So we're looking at efficiency and effectiveness, you know, with what we do. So
Are you paid by the court then?
we're using right now, like I said, we're using ARPA. It was a service that was being
So the
done.
guardian ad litem appointments are not, you don't get paid by the court to do
No,
that?
we haven't been billing them, yeah.
Have you tried?
It's something we can discuss with them, but again, you know, we're looking at, it's still going to be efficient to be locally funded in that position where we're a default appointment to the courts, because they are having problems too in all panels across the board. And the private bar has been referring people our way for many different cases. Unfortunately, some of them we can't do because, again, we're restricted with the grants that we...
I know, that's the case all around. Like, I'm referring lawyers over there, I mean, clients there too. I mean, we're all going to try, but you still have to live within your grants parameters, and I think the law also says within, you know, the availability of funds and the availability of resources. So, yeah, if the courts are putting more mandates on you, like appointments guardian ad litem, I think we should explore that, because if that's not how, if that's not how you're going to fund your attorneys, then yet you need more attorneys to do that work. They pay for the private bar to do that, right?
And I know it's because when public defenders was getting these appointments too, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that they're able to...
So they always were?
They always were.
Okay,
we're just trying to best utilize the way it's appointed. That way the focus for PDs and APDs is always going to be with a parent who possibly has a criminal-related matter versus the guardian ad litem, where our office can do it because we don't represent parents or, you know, in criminal matters. So that's the difference right now.
Okay, so if that's the case, if it's always been part of the public defender's duties, then unbilled, right? Like currently, your other services unbilled, that's fine. Okay, that's what we're paying, that's what the people of Guam are paying for. So it's just a matter of, it should be the people of Guam deciding what we're paying for, what we are prioritizing, and we have no choice but to pay for public indigent criminal defense first. So I just want to make sure that we can take care of that while we're taking care of your budget. So thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's close this up, okay?
Thank you.
There being no one else to present any testimony on the budget of the Public Defender Services Corporation, the committee will close this hearing. I want to thank everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. The Public Defender Service Corporation budget hearing is now adjourned. It is now 11:08. Please be safe. Take care. Thank you.